The thing about Nehemiah is he was called to this project of helping rebuild the walls around Jerusalem, around the city of Jerusalem. And as they were building, they were fighting off enemies, but they also had people who played played music. They had musicians, and so they had worship going on while they were building, just like us. When we work, we want some music playing, right? And so sometimes it can be different in engaging worship over YouTube videos. And I was thinking, if we're gonna have a hard time with that, I was thinking, man, thousands of years ago when they were rebuilding those walls, I bet they sure would have loved to have a radio. Like, so it's like, hey, so we don't have to, we can put in some more work while the radio's playing. So their radio was the musicians and the bands that they had, the people who could play the harp and the lyre and blow the horn and the choir, and they were singing while they were working, and stuff like that was going on. So just a little perspective on engaging, part of my commissioning us to, like, man, let's be intentional and appreciate the technology we have, just as we appreciate people who can do it live for us. Anyway, one of the people that helped lead us in worship was my brother Dave. Dave, I'm going to bring you up here real quick. Dave Gilmore, if you don't know Dave Gilmore, he's been a part of this community longer than most of you guys, man. I met Dave like one of my first couple weeks here 5.5 years ago. His son was involved with the youth ministry at that time. Dave has been just a faithful brother of mine. We've broken bread on countless lunches of Del Taco and Jersey Mike's. But anyway, recently Dave submitted a formal application for membership of our church. Said, man, it's time that I'm a vested, formal contributing member. So we just want to celebrate Dave and pray for him, and make sure that you guys, you don't always get to see Dave. Some of you guys have heard Dave teach. He's a gifted teacher and passionate about Christian apologetics. And so this is Dave. He's often hiding behind the computer in the back, joking around with Stanley. If you ever hear, snickers and people talking in the back, it's Dave and his crew. So Dave, man, we love you. We're honored. We believe in you, man, and just honored to have you a part of the crew. So, yeah, for sure. Let's pray for Dave. Love you, man. Lord, thank you for my brother. Thank you for his loyal friendship to me, his loyalty to this community, his gifts that he freely shares, his wisdom, his knowledge of the word, his courage to grab a hold of the mission that you've given him to make more people like him and to make disciples. And so we receive him with honor, as we have for years, but we receive him as with honor, and trust his spiritual maturity, and trust his knowledge of Scripture, his relationship with you, and we receive him as a breath of fresh air to continue to breathe life into the kingdom work you're doing with us. So thank you for my brother Dave, big time. In Jesus' name, amen. And bless your family, man. Yeah, bless your obedience. Something else, I'm going to introduce you guys to somebody else too. Kim Richens is part of our missions committee. We have several missions, both local and worldwide, that we support. We have actual missionaries that are dispatched across the world that we support. And so Kim's just going to give us a little overview on missions that we support, the status of our missions team, and just kind of give you guys an update on our missions committee.
I said hello instead of good morning, and that was for a reason. Because hello, to me, is your first step in your own personal mission field. All you have to do is say hello to somebody. And if that person then opens up to you in any way, that's your mission field. If not, you've made their day a happy day because you've greeted somebody who didn't know you. And you never know how simple hello can affect somebody's life. So I hope that you all remember hello. It's so simple. We just sang a song, Lead Me in Your Love to Those Around Me. That's your mission field. And we have a mission field here at Christ Community Church where we utilize what funds come in from tithes and we tithe back out. We have several mission ministries that we support, Young Life. And what's really nice about the ministries that we support is the gravity of what they produce, because we're talking from very young to elderly. We're talking from really literally our neighborhood to outside our boundaries and to all over the world. So the ministries that you support are Young Life, Chosen People Ministries, Ethnos 360, Hoving Home, Children's Hunger Fund, and the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And if you want more information about any one of those ministries, come see somebody on the team. I might not have the answer because that's not my contact group, but I can certainly refer you to somebody who is. The people that you support includes anyone inside this congregation. Should anybody need support, we're here for our own family, and you are our family. We had an outing to Children's Hunger Fund right around, I believe it was right around Christmas. Unfortunately, I was away, so I didn't get to attend it. I was a little disappointed in that we only had 3 people attend this outing, this event for our mission group. And I had really hoped, I had told them that I believed we would have at least a dozen people there. So it was disappointing to me that we didn't have a better turnout. But I know that the people who were there got a lot out of it. We want to start having more interaction with the groups that we actually support. And we would really like for our congregation to be committed to going out beyond our church walls into our mission field. And I think that if you guys could kind of commit to that, we can all make a huge difference. But beyond that, again, hello is so simple. And it's your mission field. Everybody has one. I have neighbors who are elderly, and I just check on them, make sure they're all okay. You know, if one just had hand surgery, I go over, I massage her hand. It takes me 10 minutes, but it changes her life. And it can be so simple to reach out into your own mission field. I'm not asking you to preach. I'm just asking you to reach out in the name of God, in His love, and He'll lead you to those people around you. So that's our mission, and that's our mission team. We would love to have anything that you want to say said so that we can really consider it, and I pray that you guys will become much more involved in it, and I thank you.
Check, check, check. Can you hear me? Great. Cool. Thank you, Kim. Everybody say ownership. Say ownership. If you don't get anything else today, man, it's ownership. All right. Taking initiative to be personally accountable, to take ownership. Thanks for sharing about our missions. We are a mission-minded church. We believe that we are called to come, follow Jesus, be changed by His Holy Spirit, so that we can be commissioned to take on the great commission that Jesus has given us. I got a couple pictures. This week I actually got to partner with one of those missions that we support, which is the Hoving Home. Boom, there I am. I don't know who Crystal Tanya is, but Doc Jacobs, that's me, and they welcomed me to the Hoving Home. So Simeona and I went over there. There's another picture of us out in front of the house. Just a nice place, man. This is in Pasadena. In the heart of Pasadena is a home that houses women who have been on the street, women with children who have been on the streets and been addicted to drugs. And it's a rehabilitation center. They take them through a program and rehabilitate them. They have chapel twice a week. And so I showed up at chapel, and we talked about 3 really special verses to me, and it was really special, man. on the way there, I was having a conversation with my wife and saying, like, I don't know, I'm really called to women. Like, I don't really know. I mean, I know I can offer something. I'm going to go where God calls me. I have somebody that always said, you know, you're called to go somewhere when the phone rings. So they asked me to come, so I came, just trying to be intentional, right? That the missions committee is not something separate. It's something that, no, I've got to take ownership and be in this with you guys. And so it was really a joy and an honor to go and see some of the women that we've already met. If anybody was here about a year ago, some of the women from this home, from the Hoving home, came and gave testimony. It's just really something we're honored to support. And over the last couple of years, we have prayerfully kind of been sifting through, okay, what are the missions that we're called to continue to support, and what are some of the missions that we're free, the Holy Spirit is freeing us to just release and trust God with, and who are we called to bring on? And Hoving Home was one that we said, no, we're going to continue to support that. We all felt strongly to continue to support them. And so now, just like you said, Kim, just trying to partner more intentionally and build relationship with them so they can not just feel our financial blessing, but, you know, we can breathe life into their ministry as well. So we went and did that. Speaking of Come Change Commission, I read a book this week. I'm going to reference it a couple times, and it really encapsulates the spirit of ownership that we're going to talk about today as we get into the book of Nehemiah. But as I thought about our mission, there was something that stuck out to me that I wanted to share with you before we pray and get into Nehemiah. Is anybody familiar with this book, QBQ? Anyone heard of that? Oh, man. But it's a short one. Spoiler alert, the last thing it tells you to do at the end is read it again. So I read it this week. I'm going to have to read it again. So if you would like to read along with me, I'm going to be reading it again and be reading it with my daughter. She's been voluntold. So, but something I read in it the other day says this. Let me just read the whole page here. It says, we attend too many seminars. We take too many classes. We buy too many books. We listen to too many podcasts. We engage in too much training. And I'm going to add, and we listen to too many sermons. Yes, it's all a waste. A waste, that is, if we're unclear on what learning really is. Learning is not attending, listening, or reading, nor is it merely gaining knowledge. Learning is really about translating knowing what to do into doing what we know. I'm going to say that part again. Learning is really about translating knowing what to do into doing what we know. In other words, it's about changing. Never forget, learning equals change. If we haven't changed, we haven't learned. I've also heard it said that we are knowledgeable beyond our obedience. If I applied half of what I've learned or known, man, I'd be a different person. There'd be a different level of production like I talked about last week, right? And so I heard that learning is changing. So if our mission is come, change, commission, so we can apply what we've learned, and we came here, we answered the call to come here, then say this with me. I came to change. I came to change. I came to change to be commissioned. I came to change to be commissioned. All right. So remember what I said. Let's take ownership. Okay? Let's pray. Lord Jesus, thank you so much. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be called out by you. Thank you for your Holy Spirit calling us, giving us the ability to even answer that call. We could be a lot of other places. There's not a lot of people in this room. And sometimes that can be discouraging, but we take that as encouraging. We chose to be here. We chose to answer your call. And so we're here, Lord. We're here. We answered your call. We came. And now we trust that you want to teach us something. You want us to learn so we can be changed, so that we can go apply that, so we can go take ownership of what we're learning, so that we can be a part of changing this world and blessing your kingdom through the commission you've given us. So bless this moment of change and transformation in Jesus' name. Amen. So obviously I've been reading about this book, which I'll summarize it with the word ownership. And sometimes I don't see the dots connect super quickly. I'm reading, in the Bible. I'm looking at what's next on the ticker as far as our journey through the Old Testament goes. And I'm often just trying to search for something creative, something exciting, something that I'm excited about, that you'll be excited about. And I don't always just take a step back and say, all right, God, what are you already doing in my life to teach me to apply these things? And so it really wasn't until yesterday where I was like, oh my gosh, I've been reading a book all week that I've been really excited about that aligns really well with some of the leadership qualities of Nehemiah. Okay, so we're going to talk about the leadership qualities of Nehemiah and highlight a few of them, namely his ability to take ownership. Okay, plus we'll nuance a couple others in there that I think are really important that we'll see. Now, before I get into Nehemiah, let me give you a story. So, do you guys remember the bean burritos? It is. It's an inside joke within our community. Some of you guys are like, what? There's an inside joke in our community about bean burritos being it's an acknowledgement that, oh, God just showed up. He's showing me something. I'm in the right place. There's no coincidence in this moment. Okay, I can explain the bean burritos thing later, but when that light bulb went off, I had pulled into the California Chicken Cafe drive-up spot on Nordhoff and Reseda. And I heard somebody say out the window, bean burritos it is. Okay? And it was in that moment that I acknowledged, wow, that's such a weird, awkward moment. Somebody else was just talking about bean burritos. Wow, Lord, nothing's an accident. So yesterday, I pull into the sacred space of takeout at California Chicken Cafe. And as I'm sitting there waiting for our order, they bring it out. They bring me the bag, and I'm like, I'm going to be responsible here. I'm going to check and make sure that they put everything in our bag that we ordered, right? So just so you know, there's about to be another, bean burritos it is, sacred moment that's about to happen. So I look in the bag, and I'm like, oh my gosh, they did put everything in here. But what's this extra? And then immediately, I'm like, ooh, sweet. They give us a little something extra. You're bad. That's where my initial thought was, just being real. But then I've been reading this book about ownership and personal accountability and integrity and humility, and it's like, oh, okay, all right, well, let's see what it is. And I take it out. It's like, oh, it looks like it's. I don't remember ordering any hot food. I guess these are hot plates, like hot bowls. And as the Spirit is convicting me to be a person of integrity and to be personally accountable, and ask how can I do the right thing and take ownership in this moment, I look out the window, and as I'm grabbing this extra chicken that was in our bag, and I'm looking out the window to flag down the guy that works for California Chicken Cafe, I see a little sticker on there, and it says something to the extent like, "Isn't it nice to get a little something free? This one's on us." I was like, oh, touche, CCC. That CCC teaching a little bit something to this CCC on how we can take ownership on under-promising and over-delivering, right? They're being personally accountable to say, I our customers, our patrons, to have an even better experience than they expected. So here I am over here thinking like, all right, I'm getting swaggy with my personal accountability and integrity. I'm going to do the right thing. And it's like, oh, they did the even better thing. That's cool. I'm so glad that I looked before instead of getting home thinking I took something, and it would have been a different like conviction, right? But just loving the fact that like they didn't take their job. They're just going the next step, taking the ownership, taking the personal accountability to say, hey, we owe our customers a great experience. We want to be memorable to them. And how can we go the extra step to own our responsibility to serve our customers well? So before we get to Nehemiah taking great ownership, I want to get us caught up to speed, because I got to tell you, man, like going over the Old Testament this year, I've been in Old Testament surveys. I've read the Old Testament a few times, and it's never made as much sense as it does now. And I just want to let you guys know, like, we're not through all of the books of the Old Testament yet. We're about halfway-ish. But the truth is, we're almost through with the whole story of the Old Testament. From this point on, like, we're almost through with the history books of the Old Testament. The rest of it is poetry and the prophets, the major and minor prophets that were written within this time of history that we've gotten to. And I don't know about you, but I look at the Old Testament like, man, this is super intimidating, and I don't get it, and it's boring and confusing. And it wasn't until about two and a half-ish, 3 years ago that I said, you know what, I'm going to take ownership. I'm going to just start reading the Old Testament. I'm going to be slow. I want to grasp this thing. And then God gifted me with the ability to teach, or the opportunity, I should say, to teach the Old Testament to 7th graders. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, this really is starting to make some sense. It's not that difficult. And I'm really excited to be going over it with us, because raise your hand if you're like, oh, I get it. I know the Old Testament. I got a good grasp. I can tell you all about it. Yeah. Not a lot of us. Okay? So congratulations to those who raise your hand, because you at least have a 7th grade biblical literacy level. At least. Right? The rest of us normal people who have sat in church for years and been in this game for a while are just now catching up to speed. But I'm over here thinking like, man, how cool that we have a church that is learning about the Old Testament and can at least be able to say, hey, I may be able to read at a higher level, but my biblical literacy is about the level of a 7th grader. But I'm proud of that, because there's a lot of people sitting in a lot of churches just like us that are like, yeah, I don't really, Old Testament, that's out of my league. That's over my head. But instead, we've chosen to take ownership and to spend a year going through the Old Testament, and we're afterwards, this fall, summer and fall, we're going to go through the New Testament too. We're going to go through the whole Bible in just about a year and a half and have a great picture of the whole thing. Cool, huh? Anyways, I'll get back to ownership in a second. Just want to walk us through. We have gone through all of these books of the Bible, starting with Genesis, then Exodus, then Leviticus, then Numbers, then Deuteronomy. And those first 5 books are called what category? The law, right? So then, so that's creation, mankind, God's people and his covenant with his people. Then his people are enslaved in Egypt for 400 years. And he shows up and sets them free from Egypt. And then he establishes relationship with them and the law, showing them how to live, and sends them into the promised land. And that's where we come to the book of Joshua, then Judges, then Ruth, then, I should say then, 1st and 2nd Samuel, then, 1st and 2nd Chronicles, then. So Ezra and Nehemiah is where we fall today, okay? And Ezra and Nehemiah can actually be lumped in to one story. It was originally probably written as one story. Okay? Let's back up again to Joshua. Okay? So they're sent into the promised land. Did things go well in the promised land? God sent his people into the promised land, and it goes okay. They inherit the promised land. He divides his people up into 12 tribes. Okay? And they all inherit this land, but it doesn't necessarily go well. Okay? And they establish kings, and for the most part, the kings are really rough. Okay? And during the time of kings, the nation of Israel divides into a northern kingdom and a southern kingdom, two kingdoms. The northern kingdom is just called Israel. The southern kingdom is called Judah. Okay? Eventually, the northern kingdom of Israel is taken captive by the Assyrians. And then 160 years later, I think, then the southern kingdom of Judah is taken captive by the Babylonian Empire. So the promised land is no longer occupied by God's people. And then what happens is there's a Persian empire that is raised up, and they overtake everybody. And during that time is where God allows and gives favor to his people for them to go back into Judah, into Jerusalem, and start to rebuild their city. And that's where we find ourselves in this moment with Ezra and Nehemiah. Okay? See, that's like pretty much it. And then we're going to get to a point where there's like just a period before the Messiah comes. Where we're at in the history of Israel is about, I think, 400 years before Jesus comes. Like that's really it. That's not so hard. And you're going to hear that from me for the next probably 10, 12 weeks. We're just going to keep going over that until we get it in our souls. Okay? Ezra and Nehemiah. So during the Persian Empire, some leaders are allowed to go back to Jerusalem. The first person sent back is this guy named Zerubbabel. And he goes back to rebuild the temple. Okay? When he rebuilds the temple, there's some people that are really excited, and there's some people that are really bummed out. People who are really excited are people that have never been able to worship God in like a church before. They've never had their own space. So it's like a church plant to them. They're like, this is great. The people who are grieving are the people that had seen Solomon's temple before it was destroyed. And they're like, yeah, this just ain't like the old one. Right? This isn't how it used to be. Right? Does that sound at all like churches today? Right? So this is, man, much more relatable than we realize. But you and I both know it's not just about the building. So then this guy Ezra, this priest and scribe, he gets sent back to revitalize the people, rebuild the people. But at some point in this project, it was discovered by the king of Persia that the Israelites, they're kind of rebellious people. And so the project was put to a halt. It wasn't completed. And so here they are with this half-restored temple. I don't really know where the temple was at that point, but like they're restoring the temple. They're trying to restore the community, but for sure their walls are not restored. Now back then, and this is where Nehemiah comes in, because he's going to be the one to go back and restore the temple walls. Now back then, the walls of a city were really important. Like it was not just their facade, but it had great purpose. It protected them. Whatever you had in the city was protected because of the exterior walls. Now the exterior walls were not just like walls like we have. They actually think more like Great Wall of China walls. Okay, they were several yards thick and deep, so that guards could be walking freely on top of these walls. Cities identified their protection, and they were very proud of these walls. So it could take some enemies years to find a breach in the walls to even get into the city. And if a city had enough food supply, they could be protected for 100 years. Just safe behind their walls. No one could get into their city and destroy them. So Jerusalem's walls had not been restored, and there was tons of breaches, and it needed to be restored. And so news comes to Nehemiah, who's still in Persia, and that's where we're going to pick up. That's where we're going to pick up our story. Oh my gosh, pray for me, man. I left my Bible at school. Pray that it is there. I'm 90% sure my Bible is at school. So I'm going to be reading from my phone this morning. You can read from your Bibles. Lucky you. I've been like beside myself the last 2 days, like totally out of whack because I don't have mine. I've spent time in this thing, man. So go to Nehemiah. Let me tell you a little bit before we start reading. We're going to start Nehemiah 1. We're actually going to read Nehemiah 1 and then like most of Nehemiah 2, chapter 2. Not too long of chapters, but Nehemiah was a great leader. He was given a position of authority in the palace in Persia, in Susa. You know what? I got a map. Give me that map. Can I get that map? All right. So you see where it says Susa on the right side of that map? This area of Babylon, you see where it says Babylon to the left? So that area to the east of Jerusalem is about 200 miles east of Jerusalem. So God's people have been exiled to the east, and they're kind of living in that area, roaming in that area in Babylon. And so Nehemiah is living in Susa, and he ends up being commissioned. We're going to talk about that in a minute. All the way back west to Jerusalem. That's about 200 miles separation. His journey about 200 miles. Okay, so in Susa, that's where Nehemiah is now, serving the king of Persia. Okay, you can take that map down. Thank you. So Nehemiah he's risen to a position of prominence, and he works closely with the king. He's the king's cupbearer. Okay, what do you guys know about the cupbearer? Nothing. Love that. Thank you. The cupbearer is, go ahead. Cliff, I saw a hand. Go ahead. Give me some. What do you know about the cupbearer? Yeah, cupbearer dies too. It's like he's the buffer. Somebody tries to poison the king, cupbearer's going down first, right? But it's a little more prominent and authoritative position. It's a political position. He works closely with, he's a trusted individual. He's got great character and integrity. Like he's not known to be one that would poison the king. And he's got influence with the king. He's got relationship with the king. He's always with the king. He's probably overseeing the wine supply, probably some authority in the kitchen as well. He probably is not just sipping the wine. So this dude's a great leader. He's risen to this position of prominence. And so just to give you some idea of the leadership of Nehemiah before we dive in specifically to this, Nehemiah was an encourager. He went back to Jerusalem and encouraged the people and says, guys, our walls are broken down. Our church ain't what it used to be. The city ain't what it used to be. But you know what? God's given us favor. Let's do something about it. And you know how the people responded? They said, all right, let's do it. What an encouragement he was to them. He was a warrior. They were being attacked by enemies as they rebuilt the treasured walls of Jerusalem, and he was going to war. He was literally, they would work with one hand while they had a weapon in the other. Because at any moment they knew they could come under attack. So this guy was a warrior. He was a great planner. Think about it. This is miles and miles around the perimeter of Jerusalem. It took a lot of planning to get his resources together and timber for the gates. So Nehemiah, great encourager, great planner, great warrior. He was also a coordinator. So not only did he put the plan together, but he got all of the resources and people and orchestrated this whole thing so that they could not only defend their city, but they could build and resurrect these walls at the same time. He was a servant. He cared for people. He didn't need to go 200 miles away from palace life back to the slums to rebuild the community. He didn't need to do that. He was a servant, and he was a friend, but not just a friend to anybody. He was a friend of the weak. He went back to serve and befriend his community that he cared for, and he was a friend to the weak. And all because he was willing to take what? Thank you. You guys remembered. All because he was willing to take ownership. So let's go now to Nehemiah and find a couple. Obviously, ownership is going to be a part of this, and a couple other just foundational, the mixture of his heart and character and the foundation of his leadership. All right, so this just stick with me, man. The words of Nehemiah, the son of Hakaliah. Now it happened in the month of Chislev, which I think it was like November, in the 20th year, while I was in Susa, the capital, that Hanani, one of my brothers, and some men from Judah came, and I asked them concerning the Jews who had accepted, sorry, I got distracted. This is where the Jews are first called Jews. And they're actually, I don't know if this is where they're first called Jews, but this is where the Hebrew people begin to be identified with Judah and Jerusalem. And so Jew is just short for people of Judah. Cool, huh? Yeah, that was worth sharing. Anybody be like, oh, yeah, I didn't know that. Yeah, I didn't know that either. And some men from Judah came, and I asked them concerning the Jews who had escaped and had survived the captivity, and about Jerusalem. They said to me, the remnant there in the province who survived the captivity are in great distress and reproach. And the wall of Jerusalem is broken down, and its gates are burned with fire. When I heard these words, I sat down and wept and mourned for days. And I was fasting and praying before the God of heaven. And I said, I beseech you, O Lord. First of all, let's acknowledge there's that friend of the weak. There's that servant's heart. There's that caring heart of a leader. His leadership heart is exposed. He's like, man, I am grieved about the people from my hometown. And here I am in the palace living a pretty good life. But I just found out some friends from back home came to me, and they're in a bad place. So now he's grieved. And he said, I beseech you, O Lord, God of heaven, the great and awesome God who preserves the covenant and loving kindness for those who love him and keep his commandments. Let your ear now be attentive and your eyes open to hear the prayer of your servant, which I am praying before you now, day and night, on behalf of the sons of Israel, your servants, confessing the sins. Man, I love this. Confessing the sins of the son of Israel, which we have sinned against you. Who? Nehemiah didn't do nothing wrong. Come on. Thank you, Charles. Ownership. I don't know about you, but I'm like, man, that's messed up. And even, I got a pretty good heart, so I'm going to be like, well, all right, I'll go help out. I didn't do it. I didn't put us in this situation, but no, Nehemiah says, no. He confesses, he says that we have sinned against you. I and my father's house have sinned. We have acted very corruptly against you. We, man, that we language. We have acted very corruptly against you and have not kept the commandments, nor the statutes, nor the ordinances which you commanded your servant Moses. Remember the word which you commanded your servant Moses, saying, if you are unfaithful, I will scatter you among the peoples. But remember, Lord, remember your contingency. But if you return to me and keep my commandments and do them, though those of you who have been scattered were in the most remote part of the heavens, I will gather them from there and will bring them to the place where I've chosen to cause my people to dwell. Nehemiah, I forgot his name already. Nehemiah is saying, Lord, remember who you are. Remember the promises you made. Hey, we did this. We own it. But remember who you are. And may you take ownership of the promises that you made, that if we would return to you, you'll gather us. You'll bring us back to the place where you chose for us to dwell, or for where you chose for your name to dwell. Verse 10. They are your servants and your people, whom you redeemed by your great power and by your strong hand. O Lord, I beseech you, may your ear be attentive to the prayer of your servant and the prayer of your servants who delight to revere your name. And make your servant successful today, and grant him compassion before this man. And then it says, now, I was the cupbearer to the king. So before we shift to what happens after this moment, what's the first thing Nehemiah did when he got this bad news? Well, he cried, he wept. What's the first action step? Fasted and prayed. He sought the Lord. So I already said he was a warrior, but what kind of warrior? Prayer warrior. This dude got this bad news, he grieved, and he just went into the Lord in prayer. Is prayer the first thing you go to when you are grieved and distressed and get bad news? Maybe. I can't necessarily say it's. I usually go do. I'm a do first guy, right? Well, actually, several months went by. About 4 Jewish months went by before he then did anything else. And how about that ownership that we highlighted too? He's like, man, we did this. He repented on for himself and on behalf of a whole nation. Now this guy was the cupbearer. So let's see how God answers his prayers. He already had been answering prayers by giving him favor with the king. It says it came about in the month of Nisan, and that's about 4 months later. So he prayed and he waited. In the 20th year of King Artaxerxes, that wine was before him, and I took up the wine and gave it to the king. He's the cupbearer. This is what he does. Now I had not been sad in his presence. So he had never been sad in his presence. This dude Nehemiah shows up to work every day. Good attitude. He's never been known to be downcast. And so how does the king react? He's like, man, you're about your work every day. You've got integrity. You've got great character. You never come in this place with a bad attitude. And so verse 2 says, so the king said to him, hey, why is your face sad? Though you're not sick. This is nothing but sadness of heart. But then it says, then I was very afraid. Nehemiah says, then I was afraid. Because Nehemiah knew the connection that he's worried about his people. Now the king's calling him out. Hey, what's going on? You've never been sad. And he knows, I've got to be honest. But the problem is the king knows the people of Israel to be rebellious people. That's why the plans had been stopped, because the Israelites were not true to their God, and they were known to be rebellious. So they said, you know what? Persia is not sending resources to Jerusalem anymore. We're halting these plans. So he's like, oh no, man. I don't want to be the guy that's taking advantage of my situation with the king. I don't want to be the guy that's manipulating the king. I don't want to be the guy that's trying to take advantage of my position and make this about me right now. So he's like, oh, shoot. And then I got to let him know, hey, bro, I'm a Jew, and I know how you feel about the Jews. And the king's like, what's going on? He's like, all right, here we go. Then I was very much afraid. Verse 3, I said to the king, let the king live forever. Why should my face not be sad when the city, the place of my father's tombs, lies desolate and its gates have been consumed by fire? Then the king said to me, well, what would you request? So I prayed to the God of heaven. I request something of the Lord first. And then he said, I said to the king, if it please the king, and if your servant has found favor before you, send me to Judah, to the city of my father's tombs, that I may rebuild it. Man, that just reminded me of what we talked about last week. Your gift will make room for you and place you in the presence of great men. So Nehemiah's gift of leadership, his gift of an integral heart, placed him before a man of great influence. And he had favor with him. It says, if it pleases the king, I found favor with you, send me to Judah so that I may, to the city of my father's tombs, that I may rebuild it. Then the king said to me, the queen sitting beside him, how long will your journey be? And when will you return? So it pleased the king to send me, and I gave him a definite time. And I said to the king, if it please the king, let letters be given me for the governors of the provinces beyond the river, that they may allow me to pass through until I come to Judah, and a letter to Asaph, the keeper of the king's forest, that he may give me timber to make beams for the gates of the fortress which is by the temple, for the wall of the city, and for the house to which I will go. And the king granted them to me, because the good hand of my God was on me. Ownership, man. Nehemiah could have said, oh man, that's a bummer. Maybe we can send some care packages. Man, let's pray for them. Oh, well, glad you guys came and visited. You're here with me now. We're good. We're going to pray for them. No, he took ownership. Nehemiah took ownership. Taking ownership means no longer being the victim, no longer playing the blame game. You guys have heard me say, and Charles, you know Lena Graff, you guys have heard me say the best definition of a mature adult is somebody who is anti-victim, anti-blame, and takes full ownership of your life. That's on me. So he no longer played the victim. Instead, he played the prayer warrior. He said, well, let's pray. He no longer played the blame game, but he said, how can I help? What can I do? When we take ownership, that means to place the ownership and the responsibility on our shoulders. Now, it doesn't mean do everybody else's job, but we're so quick to be like, man, what did they do to put themselves in that situation? Man, how did they end up in that place? Man, who is responsible for this? Right? Isn't that, I don't know about you, but that's naturally where my thoughts go. Pull up in the line at California Chicken Cafe. Man, who made this mistake? You're bad. Out of here. Thanks for the extra chicken. You know? We always ask. I always ask, who's at fault here? Whose responsibility is this? Why did they do it that way? Versus, man, how can I take action and be helpful in this moment? What can I do differently? That's what this book is all about. Asking the question behind the question. QBQ, that's what that stands for. So when our first question is, who's responsible for this? What can I do? The question behind the question is, what can I do to take responsibility? Nehemiah was a great leader because he was a prayer warrior. He was humble, and he took ownership and said, Lord, I need you to take ownership of this, and then I need you to tell me what I can do to take ownership of this. Because you've put me in a position that I can do something. Now, you might say, yeah, that's great. Those are great leadership lessons, but I'm not really a leader. Really? Is anyone not a leader? I'm sure you got some kids. I'm sure you have somebody that works under you, or I'm sure you have somebody that you care for. I'm sure you got a grandchild. I'm sure you got a student. We all have leadership roles somewhere, flat out. There's no way around it. So no matter what level of leadership, whether you're a cupbearer or you're just the messenger coming from Jerusalem, man, we're leaders. And we are responsible to ask ourselves in any given moment, what can I do? What can I do to take action and be helpful? So the action steps that I want you to consider is prayer, become a prayer warrior. No longer play the blame game and be a victim, but humbly ask, what can I do? And then lastly, take ownership by taking action. Take ownership by taking action. I'm going to close with something that I'm sure you guys have heard before, but this comes from a speech from 1910, I believe, from a guy named Teddy Roosevelt. But it's this passage from a speech has been most famously made known by Tom Brady, I believe. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? The man in the arena. We choose to enter into the arena when we take ownership. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there's no effort without error and shortcoming. But who does actually strive to do the deeds? Who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. Hey, we're all called to lead somewhere. And that means owning our leadership role with humility, with prayer. And that's what places us in the arena to take ownership and take action. I'm going to play one more song, and we can just sit and meditate on where are you guilty of some of those incorrect, ugly questions, and where do you need to take ownership? Where do you need to choose to place yourself in the arena rather than being a critic, rather than be somebody like Nehemiah that takes ownership? I'll let you reflect on that as we listen to this last song, and then I'll come up with an announcement and close this out.